Hey, hey, welcome to another episode. I am Dagny.
And I'm Damali.
And in this episode, we want to discuss with you the dynamics, connections, and influences when it comes between balancing or trying to balance your own individual personal values, purpose, creativity, work, legacy, and the balance with what system you're in that is determining how your purpose, your values, your creativity, and your legacy actually happens. So in this discussion, we're going to be focusing a lot on the ideology of capitalism.
Yes.
We gave ourselves some homework. As you already know, for some reason, we just enjoy doing that to ourselves. And we decided while we were having this conversation, we started branching off in different directions, noting that a lot of times the conversation about feeling burnt out or feeling like your values are based on something empty or feeling like maybe there's too much focus on materialism or on exploitation when it comes to so-called success or so-called making it. And as we were reflecting on this, noting that a lot of times it's just talking about your mindset, you as an individual, go outside and touch grass, all that kind of stuff. But it never actually talks about, but wait, what system are we in that basically created this vibe or this idea or these beliefs? And how is it really as important in terms of how it's influencing or determining things? Or is it due to our understanding of it that's causing these issues? This is how we went into a complete rabbit hole when it came to finding out the original definition of capitalism and why it was created in the first place. And then finding out, funnily enough, that now in this day and age, we actually are living in a very different version of capitalism than how it was before. And this got us down a further direction of another rabbit hole because there's a lot of debate going on about, due to the time period that we're in, this might be the end of this particular system. But found it quite funny, as we'll share more with you in this episode, if it is the end, what is next? So we found a lot of other ideas and answers to that question. And so in this episode, we want to discuss those ideas and find out, is there really an answer to what's next? Or is there an answer to how we can better balance ourselves in this system? So that's the overall beautiful umbrella, Ella, what we're going to be discussing on this episode. Yes. So to start, let's start as an individual, right? In terms of the focus in the beginning of what this episode was about. And then we can bring it outside and add on the other octopus legs when it comes to economics and capitalism. So the start, the idea of finding this notion for some of finding balance or purpose or values or alignment as if it was lost. Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw this first to you, Damali. How do you feel about this consistent rhetoric now that's been happening for some years now almost? And I don't know if 2020, which of course we're going to be talking about in this episode, right? Because we cannot not mention 2020 in this discussion, right? But I'm not sure if that experience of 2020 is what really pushed this type of discussions, or was it happening already before, of this idea of the amount of burnout and being on a hamster wheel and feeling like a tool for somebody else is really getting to a point where people are in different parts of the world being like, no, we can't do this anymore. And then end up feeling or claiming they feel lost or feel the value or the balance of the purpose is all gone. How do you feel about one? Do you feel like that's true? Like actually there's a complete direct evidence that yes, all of that would be lost if you're in the system? Or do you feel there's a little bit of propaganda or kind of not fully understanding what's going on when we make these types of statements?
Right. Yeah. I think I don't know. I'll first start with a story.
All
A
right.
little story. There's a story that, which of course ties into it. Just give me a minute. Give me a minute. And this story was, it was like it was a fan fiction story I had read. I think it's called Pearls Before Swine. I think was the story that I read, and it was a story about a mermaid. And a long story short, there was a mermaid and a human. And the mermaid was able to give pearls to the human. And when the human got the pearls, he was able to use those pearls to sell them and make money. And this happened for a time, but then all of a sudden the mermaid started looking more and more sick and really tired all the time. And the human was like, what's going on? And so one day the human followed the mermaid and found the mermaid was crying and there was blood everywhere. And so it turned out that the mermaid was cutting itself to make itself cry because the pearls came from their tears. So the reason he was getting pearls for his money was because of this crying mermaid. So of course he was so like the human was so kind of like scared, like terrified about this because he didn't know. He's like, "Oh my God, stop it! Why are you doing this?" And then the mermaid was like, "Well, you said that the only value that you have is money. Like the world is about money. And the only value I can give you obviously is my pearls to make you money." And the human's like, "No, no, I don't want you to hurt yourself." And this whole thing is so dramatic kind of thing. And so that story, it was very, I think, poignant because there was even a time where the mermaid would give the human apples, and he really wanted him to try the apples, but the human was so distracted by I need money, that they didn't eat the apples. And then this I think this is a similar story to I think it's a story with like the birds. I think it's a crane about the story of a crane of this bird that kept on making silk, I think, for a human, and then and it turns out that the crane was taking its feathers, pulling out its feathers, which of course is very painful, pulls out the feathers to make the silk, right? And so of course the human is like, "Oh my God," and so the human didn't know. So the reason I bring that story up is because that makes me think of capitalism and just our purpose and our value, and this idea that obviously we have to work and make money and do all of that, but we have this propensity, I guess, I don't know if it's a human thing, where it becomes that's all we kind of are. And so like our whole value and our whole purpose is based off of how much we can give people, or how much work we can do, and how much money we can give to people or society. And that's one main point of our episode today, where it's like, how do you balance that? Like, how do you balance that purpose where your value goes beyond your title, or like what if you're a president or CEO or or a teacher, like what like aren't we more than that? Like isn't there more to the human experience than just like, "Oh, okay, I just have this job," and then if tomorrow all of that, the title and the job and everything is removed, our whole life is doomed and we should just go like jump in a hole somewhere and hide. And which makes me think of the story where it's like, and then of course in the story a lot of bad things happened after that. The mermaid was in danger after that because of like giving off its pearls, because then of course when you give away the pearls, everybody else wants the pearls, and they're like, "Oh, this mermaid has pearls, let me go," and like, and then also the story brings in exploitation, where the human friend didn't even know that in a sense you were exploiting the mermaid without realizing it, because you were forcing them to give you something that everybody else wants it. So I think I speak more for America, I guess, because I'm from America, obviously, but I do think that this idea that and it's really hard to remove yourself from that. Like whenever people try to you see your worth outside of your job or school or whatever, you're struggling, right? Even though part of the human experience is just to experience it, like that's the worth. And then also and then I think about like babies, like, are babies worthless because they don't have a job? Like you come right out of the womb, like you're worthless? I don't think so. How did we go from baby, it's cute, it's adorable, it's the most beautiful thing ever, and it's so full of worth, to you're worthless if you don't do anything, right? Or even when it's not like, it's a small pause, like we have a small shift, like, oh, I'm not doing something at this very moment and I'm figuring out my next step, even that little pause can be seen as, oh no, hurry up and get a job, hurry up and go back to school, hurry up and do this thing because your worth is in the balance, And I think that, and I guess in this episode we're kind of discussing, like, is that capitalism is the problem with that? Does that have anything to do with capitalism, or is it just humans that we like to assign importance to things that sometimes are important but could be different, right? Like how like with money, how like technically money is just a piece of paper. Like, I don't know if you guys forget or not, but money is a piece of paper that we made up and we made it green and we put some president's face on it, Washington, Andrew Johnson, like, and we like use money is such a big thing, and the paper is not the issue. It's not, it's the value of it, right? To the where you that's all it's about and nothing else. And I think it's not so much obviously we're not going to tomorrow be like, yeah, let's just everyone just leave your jobs, leave school, and just go go wrap yourself up in dirt in the mud outside and just stay there. Don't do anything else. Like, no. But I think there needs to be some kind of balance, because then we're kind of like the proverbial cliche metaphor of like being a hamster on a wheel and being like a tool, and like, are we just a tool, and like what more are we here for? And then at the end of it, we feel so kind of that's I guess why there's a sense of law. And I think that also ties into what you said, like bringing up 2020 and about COVID, because I think that COVID really put that into perspective, right? Because all of a sudden you couldn't be your title anymore. All of a sudden you couldn't, you physically could not do your job, or you physically could not do things because, there were people dying outside. People were getting sick and dying outside, obviously. So I think, and then how other things connected to it too, where all of a sudden, oh, the grass is green again, like, oh, the birds are singing, and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait, where'd the birds go? The bees came back. Just kidding. But all of these things are happening. Oh my God, look, the ocean is actually blue again, because obviously, like, I wouldn't say capitalism, but I guess like parts of capitalism sometimes influence our climate change issue, and like how things are being polluted and things like that because of the way we're dealing with our waste, I guess, right? So yes, I do think they need to constantly be doing a balance, and everybody knows what I talk about, right? Like, oh, make sure you have enough time for yourself, make sure you go outside, make sure you do your Zen stuff, your health, and just take some time for yourself, whatever chance you have. But we definitely need to. It's like, it is important. Our mental health is important. I know, especially nowadays, like some people are like, oh, it's just like a buzzword, and everyone's just saying whatever. And yes, I will admit there are some buzzwords to do with that, but I think mental health is important. Like, well, why is that? Our physical health is always seen as very important, right? We're all about physical health, like physical, but your mental health can affect you just as much as your physical health, right? Like, you can really, like, if your mental health is really bad, you could end up in the hospital, and that could affect your physical health. So I think it's important to make time for that and deal with that. And I think I don't know if it's difficult to say, like, oh, do we have to completely change our system, or do we have to, completely change the kind of, I guess, economic system or ideology we're living in to do that? Is that possible? Is there an alternative to that? Like, what does that mean? And so we just wanted to kind of, I guess, yeah, just focus on that and just think about that. So that's what I would start. And then also to add that, yeah, like aligning yourself and being aware of your mental health, like, it shouldn't be like a luxury. It shouldn't be, it should be like a routine. The same way, like, you wake up and you brush your teeth, right? Making sure your mental health is good is also just as important. And you don't need to, I know, like, a lot of celebrities, because I guess because they have time, they can go, oh, I went all the way to Egypt to find myself, and like, that's fine. That's good for you. But I don't know if all of us have that kind of deal. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if we all can do that, right? But I do think it's important to not sniff at it, to not do that, even though it's hard. And yes, we get burnt out and exhausted, but there needs to be a time to just breathe and just realize that there needs to be more to life than just like the title. Like we need to, we can't just be, oh, there's only this one thing and that's it type deal, right? So I think that's how I'll start with that. I don't know if you want to piggyback off of anything with that, Dagny.
Yes, definitely. I think the story you brought up, or the folklore that you brought up, is a perfect way to start the conversation, because I do feel that the system that we've been in, a lot of it is set up in a way where you may not even realize how you are also participating in exploitation.
Yes.
Just normally, because so much of it, you don't know where the supply chain of what you claim you need, or what you claim you want, or what you're working with. And then it's a shocker when it makes breaking news because something broke. And you're like, wait, what? I didn't even know that we were like killing all the forests, or I didn't know we were cutting up children. I didn't know we were like, these sorts of things come up, or I didn't know that neighborhood doesn't have water because this neighborhood hijacked it. I didn't know, because the way you're kind of having to just always be on, and in your own little hamster wheel, you never get to look outside to see how almost everybody in the system is being exploited in some shape or form. And I think we'll speak on even later in the conversation about, whether or not exploitation was supposed to be part of capitalism from the beginning, or is it something that, as always, something that the original thing was made in a way that was supposed to be beneficial for everybody. But then us humans, as always, found some type of way to carve out some other aspect only for certain people. Another thing also that you noted that I thought was important was this deal of like, yes, focusing on, you're balancing your mental health, or balancing that there is more to life than only focusing on title or money. And I think this is where the conversation also, these debates about whether or not capitalism should continue and stuff, is also there should be credit given to like the generational changes and privileges, where I feel like the first parts of capitalism, everybody did have to focus on money because there wasn't any there, or the privilege of being able to see outside of just trying not to drown was not there. And so I think on one hand, one could say that, okay, if we're now in this era where the generations who are participating actually do have the time and the capacity to look up and be like, wait a minute, there's more to this. Why are we still in a box? On the one hand, that might mean that maybe capitalism has delivered the results that it was supposed to when it first started, to allow populations to have the capacity and the time and the privilege to be like, actually, we can do more with what we have, because there's so much, we're no longer just in survival at that level like it was before, which we can be like, give credit to that ideology for that. But I feel like the overall or the winning result would have been that we notice that this is what is needed, and then it actually happens. As opposed to right now, where it's like, we're noticing this is needed, but then still noticing that exploitation is allowing only certain people to have it, and everybody else is still on the hamster wheel of some form of survival mode, where they don't have the time to do those sorts of things, or feel like they cannot afford them. And I think that's where we'll get more into, like, I feel like the original capitalism has been hijacked to allow that to happen. So with that, let's get into, some definitions. So we're all on the same page of like what we're actually talking about. Yeah. So when we say capitalism, this is a certain economic system that was originally created to drive wealth, innovation, and individual freedom. So this was something that was trying to break away from the perceived caste system or monarch hierarchy system, where it's a deal of you are born in this one particular place and you stay there. You can't do anything unless you're going to pretend, like in some folklore, somebody pretends to be the prince and kidnaps the prince to pretend, that kind of thing. But if you can't do that, you're going to just remain at certain levels. Capitalism was supposed to provide equality, which then meant, though, that, okay, now it's like everybody for themselves. If you put your mind to it and work hard and take risks and contribute, apparently if all of us are individually doing that, collectively the economy will grow and everybody should benefit from the growth of an economy because it should trickle to everybody. That was the idea for capitalism. And technically, in some respects, this did work, right? That is how the Industrial Revolution and all kinds of infrastructure was put into place. Fast forward to now, though, with what I just described, would we say that is the same type of capitalism we are living in now? Yes, technically, everybody individually is trying to work hard, now having to juggle multiple, so-called multiple hustles of all kinds, in person and online, to continue driving money somewhere. Are we driving innovation? That's a question for the gods. Maybe, maybe not, depending on what you're doing. And are we actually individually free? This is where I feel that I feel like the persona of capitalism has changed, where the notion of economic freedom, individual freedom, has been morphed to be a persona that only certain people can have, and everybody else is striving for, when it really is only an illusion. The idea of capitalism was that it was supposed to be everyone individually is benefiting. The version we're in now, it seems like corporations are the only ones who are benefiting. I understand corporations are technically not people. They are a company, but corporations are like the mask behind certain groups, or certain key groups of people are really the only ones experiencing the level of freedom that capitalism was created in the first place. This is where I feel then the debates that have been happening of like, we should just get rid of all of it, remove it, just press delete, erase it, and go somewhere else, comes into play, because so much exploitation has kind of taken up so much space in capitalism, where, similar to your folklore story, where there is way too much extraction and ripoffs and unfairness and unjust happening just for the sake of business needs to keep on going, just for the sake of the corporation just needs to get bigger and bigger, where it's created these like octopus monopolist type things. Yes, which is difficult to, on an individual level, is difficult to even wrap your mind around, because when you think about how these corporations are interconnected and what they're producing, like you thought they were just producing toilet paper, and then you find out they're also producing weapons as well as medication, as well as potatoes. And you're like, wait, how can one corporation be doing all of that? And you think they're actually doing it like ethically. Yes. The other layer, and I promise all of these connect, the other layer, I feel, of this hijacking of capitalism on the individual side that kind of pushes back on this balance deal for individuals is this hamster wheel hyper consumerism, you're always rushed, have no time vibe, which is what this version of capitalism has created, of always going on to the next goal. No, you got to get the next raise, the next promotion, the next title. You got to get the newest car. You got to get the newest phone. You got to be in this other neighborhood. You need to keep on consuming. You need to just keep on eat it all up. And now we're going to make it even more convenient. We will deliver it into your not your neighborhood, your living room. All you got to do is press pay on your phone. Boom, it's there with you on the couch. That continues to enable you to be distracted from the huge octopus that's like right in your room, but you can't see it because all it is about is consumerism, which then allows the distraction to continue, that when some of us feel like, oh my goodness, all of a sudden you've gotten the bug to want to make a difference. And so you feel that, okay, as an individual, I'm going to stop my subscription to this one business, or I'm going to not purchase from that business, or, I'm going to take a bottle to work every day and I've done my part, and it's like, but do you actually understand the depth of these octopus legs, like how deep they go and what difference it actually does not make if one person is doing this one thing. So what I like too, in terms of how we were getting into this episode of like, it's not so much about, oh, so here's the solution of how we're just going to bring it all down. Actually, capitalism is not the issue. It's this hijacking, exploitation, and certain groups of people feeling entitled to just run everything. That is where the issue is. And as individuals trying to make informed decisions of understanding of how are all of us individually connected to this exploitation that we possibly do not support. I'm hoping majority of us do not support. If more of us understood how that worked, I think we would be better equipped to understand what could we do as an individual. Most of the time it's like, okay, it goes for the money. What do you do for your money? And I'm like, yes, it could go with the money, but is it enough to just claim I'm not going to buy that thing? Not really, because you don't know who owns that company. It's an octopus. So even if you went to the other store, it's probably the same company that you're still giving your money to, even though it wasn't this particular franchise. So that is for me, the reasoning behind like why it's important, as we're now going to go into what is the actual issues when it comes to this system that we're in, that individually and collectively is not serving us. And what would it look like, or what would be helpful to understand of how the system could change? What alternatives do we have? And making sure we're not missing the mark when we, after this episode that you listen to, you get into these debates or discussions, yes? Because the point is, all of us as individuals I feel we all have a responsibility to be proactive in the way we participate in these systems. And who knows, you or I could be in a room that's making the decision about maybe we should change this law, or maybe we should change the way we do this, or maybe we can remove that restriction. And you can't make an informed decision if you don't even know how the system really works outside of the bill you got on a receipt and you don't understand why the taxes are the way they are. Or outside of, you are more qualified than your supervisor, but somehow they're getting paid more than you. Outside of those things, all of them are connected, but we need to better understand. They don't want you to understand, but we need to better understand how it works if we want to change it for the better. Yes. So,
yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to add to that before we now go into the part of these different ideologies that we found?
Yes, yeah. I kind of wanted to say that it's almost like we have this. I learned this the other day called internalized capitalism, where it's like it's basically we're in this capitalist society, and we have these internal standards where our whole focus, our whole compass is this is how capitalism works, kind of thing. And then also it makes me think about the song. You guys know the Katy Perry song, like the fireworks song. What is it like? Do you ever feel like a plastic bag drifting through the wind, wanting to start again? You know the fireworks song. And that also makes me think, yeah, do you ever feel like a plastic bag? Like, are you just like floating through the wind? You know what I mean? And there definitely, I think that there is an issue with this consumerism we have in capitalism that also adds to what our value is, and everything is just a productivity and about consumerism. And so I agree with you where it's not like, oh, capitalism is a problem. No, it's just, I think there's a lot of human error that's in that, and then the way that things start one way and then they change. And also another part I forgot was to bring up was AI, and I'm wondering how AI would like end up affecting the capitalism deal. Because like if we can just have, like, I was kind of joking of Dagny saying how like, oh, what if you just, everyone's able to stay home, but they can control their AI, and their AI is the one that goes and does the work for them, and we can just like vibe. Like we just vibe and the AI does everything we want, and there's no problem, right? Because then or you go to work, but the moment you need a mental health break, you take your AI out of its bag or its pouch or whatever it's sitting in, our AI robot, and then it does it for us. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like that would be the easiest way to deal with things, right? And then have the AI just clean up everything that we're, making a mess with. Because it's true. We often hear people be like, take down the capitalism. Capitalism is the end of capitalism. And I'm always like, but what does that mean though? Like, what does it actually, do we really know what that means? Like, do you know how, what's that saying? I think it was Lawrence Fishburne in The Matrix. Like, do you know how deep the rabbit hole goes or something like that? I need to watch that movie because The Matrix also, that movie really goes into stuff where I'm like, what are you talking about? You want to know what we're talking about? Watch The Matrix. Okay. Watch The Matrix. Okay. But yeah. And so we do have this idea where we like it starts off good and everything is fine. The economic system is fine. And then, but all these other problems are popping up. And I'm like, why are we having these problems? What's going on? And then, of course, I always come back to that anime that I watched, Psycho-Pass, where Psycho-Pass was, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but in Psycho-Pass, basically, you have a type of system that people don't know, but like they don't know fully what the system is and what it's doing. But if you knew what everything behind the scenes, then you would understand why this is happening with corporations, or this is happening with humans, or why this is going down. So yeah, so for this, it's that this episode is not like take down the like it's not about that. It's just about how do we balance it and what other, you know, if I mean, I don't think there could be an alternative, but if there was an alternative or some way to fix it or add to things or try to kind of take out the exploitation piece so much, take out the greed part, you know, maybe lessen that a bit. It would be good to do that, because it's true. It's not that simple where like, oh, I'll just stop buying this one thing, or I'll just do, and I'm like, that doesn't really affect that much that you think that it does. It's too big, you know, and I think of big corporations like Google or like Ticketmaster or like Apple, like it's not even like, you know, it's not even one human. It's like a whole it's a whole conglomerate of all this stuff. So we can't, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what is the issue. Why are people so unhappy? What can we do to fix that?
And
I
I
think that's all
like
I have to say for now.
okay. And I like how you brought up AI, because I think actually that's a perfect way to segue into these different, ideologies. A note I wanted to note also to add to that for people to understand how AI connects in capitalism, because I think the way it's evolving is a great example of the octopus analogy that I was giving. So on the consumer side, we would love to have AI to assist in these different ways, more conveniently or more easily. On the back end or developer side, we know that, okay, AI right now, it's still being owned by these same bigger corporations that are part of this mass corporation of capitalism. Okay. Then we take note on the environmental side. Apparently, allegedly, supposedly, AI requires a lot of like computer servers in one place to do a lot of stuff that needs a lot of water to keep them from like burning up themselves, which unfortunately means apparently every one little ask or prompt that you send for an AI to do something for you causes those huge servers to go through their process to give you the answer or give you the prompt or something. But that also pumped a bunch of gallons of water in order to do that. Meaning that on the long term, we can't really empty out the entire ocean in order for an AI bot to be able to do what it needs to do. I still don't understand why, of all of our brilliant minds who created AI, you didn't think that maybe depending on water should be the way this thing should work. I'm just saying, but yeah. So that's an issue, which is where some young people note like, so don't use it. And it's like, okay, so first of all, it's literally programmed in all machines right now. So you can't really not use it unless you just don't be on a machine. But that's an issue. And that's a level of exploitation that's removed from the eye, because most of us are not living or see it in front of us, technically. Then on the other side of it, all of the AI programming that needs to happen, humans need to do that. And unfortunately, there is, as you know, there's the dark side of the internet. Because remember, the AI programming is still going through, what is this? What is that? Is that a ball? Is that a circle? Is that, while it's going through all the data it is harvesting online?
Yes.
I recently actually saw a documentary about this on one of them and had read about it before too, that the training that's done to get the AI to know what is violence, what is porn, what is wrong, what is bad, or whatever. Some of these corporations are, I guess, is that what's called exporting those jobs to countries in Africa and countries in South America, where you have people looking at a screen for like 8 hours a day, having to watch hours of violent videos of all kinds to train the AI to know this is violence, it should be flagged. Yes? And they're, of course, because they're in countries in Africa and countries in South America, these people are not being paid well in any shape or form. And they have now been reporting that they're having mental issues due to this type of work because it's causing them a problem having to watch such terrible imagery in order to train the AI. And when there was a case recently, last year or so in Kenya, when the employees complained about it and actually made a case, the company just closed, shut down, canceled all their contracts, and moved on to another country to continue the work. And these training companies, they do this again with the Octopus Corporation. It's not Apple that hired you. It's a third-party company that's training stuff for Apple's products. So your contract is not with the bigger name. It's with a subcontractor name as well. But the money's coming from the bigger name. Again, another octopus leg of exploitation that, again, most people will not see unless you yourself personally know somebody who's been in this situation, or some documentaries or news may come up. But this is where, as again, great technology, innovation, awesome, which is what capitalism was created for, to give you the humans the capacity to continue inventing great things. But then when it comes to the nitty-gritty of how do we get it to be convenient and accessible and a common thing that now everybody is reliant on, there's certain things behind the curtain, as usual, which is a part of the pollution, including polluting people's health, that should not continue happening. And now that we have that knowledge, years ago, during when we're trying to be industrialists and stuff, people didn't know, like you noted, people didn't know that the whole environment might have an issue if you keep on pouring oil in the ocean and cutting off down all the trees. Okay. Now, decades later, we know now, and we're paying for it. Today, right now, it didn't take us 30 years, 50 years to find out that if you continue like this when it comes to AI, you're going to have a problem. Not only on the environmental side, but on the human side too. If you end up exploiting whole populations in order to train a machine. So that is having that knowledge, right? Just as an example, so we don't get confused with bringing up multiple analogies, right? But just that one example of this is how the octopus legs work. Well, in the front side, look at this great new product, and it's so convenient for you, and it does is the best technology ever. Mm-hmm. But in the background, it's technically killing the planet and other people in order for it to work. Mm-hmm. Again, that's not necessarily capitalism insisting that should be the case. It's how we are utilizing the capitalism system, insisting, well, we can afford to exploit, because that's all we've been doing, in order to get this product or get you hooked on this product or this consumption. So, with that, let's dive into the so-called alternatives to capitalism. If the question was, okay, we hear you guys, capitalism has become a problem. Okay, but then what else? What's next? If we removed it, what would be next? Welcome to the next part of our homework assignment. Okay,
calm down.
Okay, so to start, do you want me to start with the first one, or do you want to start with the first one?
Yeah, you go ahead and start.
Okay. So the first, and the one the order that we're saying these in is not a particular order. It's just how we found
what we got in our research,
what we got in our research, and just how we placed it in the doc. All right.
Yes.
So one of the ideologies that we found is called the degrowth ideology, or the degrowth movement, and this particular philosophy advocates for reducing production and consumption to improve social and ecological well-being. This is based on the idea that a finite planet with limited resources requires a reduction in global consumption and production. This philosophy argues that whatever economic, political, or social system we put in place, they must work in harmony with our environment and the finiteness of the material resources that we have on Earth. Now, the pros and cons to this. Well, we also notice that each of these philosophies, they tend to then pull in other mini philosophies to go inside it for some reason, which, to be honest, I was like, I have not taken an economics class in some years. So it was getting us a little dizzy when they just want to be throwing in more and more stuff that you have to like also research what do they mean. But within the degrowth movement, they do bring up other like mini philosophies. I don't want to say mini as if it's to dismiss it, but just like it's underneath the main heading of degrowth.
Yes.
They bring there we go.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, subheading. They talk about circular economy, which is a model of production and consumption that puts sustainability at the heart of the system, following a slogan that we all have heard: reduce, reuse, recycle. The same 3 R's. This is aiming to minimize the use of natural materials and resources. Another subheading philosophy to this is also called the donut economics, which again is a sustainable development framework, which is supposed to focus on a series of social and planetary boundaries that we need to observe in order for both humanity and the environment to thrive. Apparently is not only theoretical, but also is actively being put in place or in practice through engaging governments and local authorities worldwide to encourage implementing this. Okay. Now, this, of course, sounds a lot like some of the headings or buzzwords we hear when like the UN does their meetings. You know, those meetings.
Yes.
Where all these countries, and I'm not bashing the UN. I'm not, totally not. But you know those meetings when we have all of these heads of states of countries talking about how they've definitely planned for the next 20 years, how they're going to keep the world alive and happy. Okay. And then when they leave these meetings, some countries continue to be trash. And then feel entitled to tell other countries, no, you can't produce that because it's going to cause something for the environment. Or no, you can't do that to your people because then you don't have jobs. Well, they're like actually the only biggest producer of pollution in the entire world. I don't need to say names because I'm sure you already know what I'm talking about. So we're just going to say about these meetings. These meetings. Like it reminds me of like the Millennium Project that they did, which I feel like the deadline has already passed.
I think so.
And did we solve poverty? Did we end world hunger? Did we plant more trees? Exactly. But I digress. So when it comes to my ending of degrowth, so we can move on to the next one. The pros and cons, which we'll list the pros and cons for each of them for you. And then I feel like you will hear how there's a common thread with these alternatives, which we then will discuss what that common thread means. So when it comes to the pros, the positives, the benefits to this degrowth ideology philosophy is that it focuses on sustainability, reducing inequality, and fostering an equitable society, meaning it could help with environmental goals and reduce the pressure on natural resources. But the cons. The disadvantages. The opposite of benefits.
Yeah, I think
to this
Dagny.
philosophy. Oh, okay. Just checking. The cons argue, or critics argue, that it could lead to economic stagnation, higher unemployment, and a reduction in living standards for some people, particularly in less developed countries that rely on growth for improving their quality of life. So all in all, even though on paper it sounds like having a system that really pushes this buzzword sustainability should be the answer as an alternative to capitalism, it possibly still does not answer how exactly economics is going to thrive or even function in a sustainable way that does benefit everybody involved. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Damali, to take us on to the next. Yes, the next ideology and philosophy that we found that could be an alternative for capitalism.
Possibly, right. Yeah, let me just go back real quick. So it looks like a lot of some of these are like in theory they sound awesome, but in practice I'm not sure. Because when you hear like the degrowth one, it's like, oh, I mean, yeah, we should focus on the world and climate change and sustainability. Obviously, that's the main thing, and that will really, help us. But it's like, okay, but where's the money for that? Right. And then and if that does cause unemployment and it does cause the economy to, going to say flat line. I guess stagnation. Yeah, same. Okay. That's cause it a flat line. How does that work, right? How do we switch that, right? So that was interesting. It sounds awesome. When we first looked at it, I hadn't heard, because normally when I hear of like the economics, I always think of like Marxism, socialism, communism, right? Capitalism, totalitarianism. Small segue. I just started reading really late, but I started reading Animal Farm. You guys know George Orwell, Animal Farm? I'm such a nerd. Oh my God. But I think that was totalitarianism is what that was, the 1950s. But yeah, those are the ones I normally hear of. And when we went into the interwebs and we did a research, like we're in a history class and we're like, oh, degrowth. I'm like, what is that? What is that ideology? I look it up and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, why haven't we done this? But you look at the cons and you're like, oh, that's why, you know? So yeah, I mean, all these other economics. Yeah. So that's one of them. And the next one that we came up, this one I think Dagny had looked up, was one called talentism, right? That was the one that you had brought up. And for this one, I think we're focusing more on the human talents, and the human talents individually is the most important factors of production. So if talent is becoming the decisive competitor factor, we can be confident in saying that capitalism is being replaced by talentism. I'm not sure if talentism could, be able to remove capitalism, but it's the focus is more about talent, and I guess to make it more about humans. So some good things about talentism, I can't even say it, talentism, is that it encourages individuals to develop their personal, fostering innovation and creativity, right? And especially nowadays with technology, we're really in innovation and creativity and things like that, right? And this would be useful because it will reward those who contribute to society in meaningful ways, which, okay, that sounds amazing. That's awesome, right? But then we go into why talentism might not work. It's because it can still cause inequalities, right? Because like if you're really talented at this thing and I don't have talents or I'm not good at something, bam, inequality, right? Because we don't all have the same inequality. And then also, if you don't have access to certain education opportunities, this obviously could possibly influence your talent or being able to, even if you have a talent, it can influence being able to get better at the talent and be able to practice it and get better. It can it can exclude different certain groups, right? And then it can become biased. And then it can promote the idea that economic success is only about individual merit, which of course ignores the structural issues like inequality or lack of opportunity, like I said before. So if we're focusing too much on the individual talent or merit, this could cause a problem for the economy, and mostly about the structure, right? And then how do you even and then figuring out how you're measuring this, right? And so that was one that which also I had never heard about before. I'm like, talentism, what the heck is that? Like what? But Daddy was the one that brought that one up. So again, we're like, okay, we're focusing on the individual. Everyone has a talent, they can do this, but if we still have the inequality problem, then wouldn't that also make us fall into the exploitation again? Which isn't that another issue of capitalism, that we're going to exploit things, which whether you have a talent or not? Because if you have, let's say you have like 10 people and one person has this amazing, great talent, they're so amazing at, I don't know, pick whatever skill. Of course humans are weird, right? Okay, let's exploit that person. Let's exploit them until they die. You know what I mean? Like, let's exploit them like a horse, kind of thing, or like an ox. We just keep on like using them until they die because that's what we need. And then what if the person can't, because of exploitation, they can't use their talent anymore? That can be an issue. And then also I think about how would that work with like jobs and stuff? Because like what kind of talent, like which ones, like how do you figure out who gets paid more? Because even if you think about people, like we have like celebrities, for instance, in entertainment, and they get paid a lot of money, right? Like a lot of money for their talent, and people are like, how can that be fair? They're not saving anybody's life or anything, so why are they getting paid so much, right? So and then again, so we have the same issue of inequality. But I thought that was kind of interesting. And Dagny, would you like to add any more about our talentism?
I also found talentism interesting because it kind of created this notion that, so all of this people who have personas on social media. So you're not really a celebrity, but you're not really a regular person anymore. You're kind of a public figure in limbo because it really is just on a social media app. But your talent or so-called, so relatable, authentic, etc., is your value that you are exchanging for money, is what you're getting paid for, is what some people went from poverty to now complete billionaire, millionaire mode from there. And so wondering or even claiming that a whole economic system could be based on post your talent somewhere and boom, that is your vibe. So you're not in a job, but you are constantly exchanging your skill set or your talent for monetary or financial means. That then again shows the exploitation manner, because again, does the talent own anything other than what they're posting? But do they own where they're posting it? No. Do they own the brands that are going to pay that? No. Like, what do they own in terms of blocking themselves being exploited or taken advantage of or being ripped off? They don't. And so with that particular model, I noted that, but it doesn't make it seem like, oh, now the talent will be the ones in charge or calling the shots. It's just that the talent is now the supply chain part, is part of the supply chain now, or the demand chain of system. Yes. Yeah. Interesting. Moving on. Next.
Yes.
System, or towards the end of the systems that.
Towards the end. There's a couple. There's so many, but we were like, we're just going to use a couple of them and see how they feel.
Yeah. So this one was called participatory. Participatory.
SAT word.
Yes. Participatory economics. This is considered a decentralized planned economic system based on collective ownership of production and the opportunity for all people to directly participate in the decision-making process in all areas of society that affects their lives individually. This is unlike a modern democracy, which, according to this system, there's a myth claiming that every voice has one vote that's actually heard, when we know that's not exactly how democracies work. So, for this one, it claims that because there is social ownership of productivity and you manage your own workplace and neighborhoods, as individuals, you really are like fully proactively participating. And so the decisions you make, you actually see a reflection of it. The pros, the benefits of this.
Good things.
They claim this could reduce exploitation and inequality, encourage democratic decision-making, even though, again, why do they use the word democratic when we've already noted that democratic is not really that, but maybe the dictionary version of it would actually follow it. And this should empower workers. It also emphasizes solidarity and fairness, and should be a move beyond the alienation associated with capitalism. The cons, the disadvantages of participatory economics, is that it requires complete overhaul of the economy, like completely rip it out and leave a hole and start from scratch. That's what this system would require. And so, of course, the critics argue that it would be inefficient due to the complex nature of collective decision-making, and that it might reduce the incentive for innovation or personal achievement. And that does hold some weight when it comes to when you're thinking what kind of economic system works for you. Because if everybody is apparently, or everyone's hand is in the pot, like everybody's in the kitchen at the same time, does anything get cooked? Does anything get done? Unfortunately, and especially if you're dealing with a population who's been used to a certain way all this time, how long would it take for people to get used to, well, we can't finish the decision until all 9 million of you have submitted your decision? Would it possibly take longer for things to get done or finished or even decided on? These are questions. Questions. I'm not telling you what to think. We're not telling you which system you should be, for or against. Just saying these are types of questions when you're thinking about economics. These are types of questions that have to come in your mind about which ones actually would make sense for a population or for a country. So, okay.
Yeah, that was kind of the... Oh, did you want to say more about it? I was going to add a little bit.
No, go ahead. You can add now. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was a good point you brought up about how the way that we live life right now, could we change the participatory economics? Because like there's a difference between if we had started out with it already, like this was already the way things were, versus, okay, now because we're not starting like ripping out capitalism and doing participatory economics, how like is very different from, oh, this is the new thing, like everyone gets like brainwashed, like Attack on Titan style. Sorry, I always have to bring up anime references because I'm an anime otaku. Okay. Yeah, like Attack on Titan style, we brainwash everyone, we remove everyone's memories, and then we're like, okay, we're doing participatory economics now, and then you completely forget that capitalism exists until you don't, and then things happen, and Aaron Yeager does what he does. Anyway, and also, even though it empowers workers because it makes everyone feel they have a voice, but like we can't make a decision until we do this, which makes me think a little bit opposite, I guess, of talentism, because talentism is about like everyone individually does their own thing, and that's how we build society. So participatory, where it's like everyone has something to say, and I guess it's like, it's not so much about the individual stuff, it's more of like we all have to vote on it, and then, I guess and then how do we even get to a decision? Like, I guess it's like how many more votes on something, or I guess like we just try to figure out how to put all of the ideas together to make one. I don't know. It just like the beginning sounds good, but now it just seems complicated to me. How would we do that, right? And then would that trickle into another type of economic? Like, I don't know. It just seemed that there would be a lot of control issues of that, because if everyone's on the same page, then it's fine. If everyone has the same like general, but if we're like too opposite, I don't know if it would really work, as we've seen, but like, yes, we live in a democracy, and yes, everyone's vote means something, but like it's like like it's we've seen that it's sometimes it's not everyone has a say like we like to act like it does. And for the participatory economics, it looks like it would actually do that, but there would still be problems, right? Even if everyone, if everyone can think about group projects that you've done, and everyone knows the really good. I don't know if there's anyone who's had amazing group projects throughout their whole life. If there is someone, please tell us, because that's crazy. But I think a lot of people have issues with group projects, and we know that even if we're working on the same project and we have to get the same thing, and everyone gets the same grade, sometimes it doesn't work, right? Sometimes you get a grade, one person is upset and one other person is happy. How do we do that? And then also this part where it's like it can be inefficient, and this part, it might reduce the incentives for innovation or personal achievement. Yeah, we might lack in innovation, right? And with the way the world is and how things are changing, we kind of need to innovate, right? We need to do new things, because a lot of older things are not working anymore, or it doesn't. We need to. I feel like maybe participatory economics might stall growth as well, because with the system we have in America, even though yes, there's issues with America, but we've grown really fast, right? Like especially ever since with technology and stuff, and like Facebook, Instagram, Google, like we have grown so quickly, right? It's like it's crazy, right? I don't know if participatory economics would really work with that, but it's interesting to know. And it's very different from the talentism and degrowth. So I thought that was an interesting one. And I hadn't heard. Dagny, had you heard about this one before? I had not heard about this one before.
Participatory, not in the sense of full economics. I've heard of it because it sounds a little bit like, I think, what they do in Switzerland, where everybody needs to like everyone does need to submit. Indeed, the persona of the persona of a neutral country. Let's not get into their history now. Okay, they know right? What they know, what they did. But beside that, the notion of like actually your whole population is proactively participating. So they all know who was running for this office. They all had a say of whether that person's going to be in that position. And throughout their time there, they are proactively participating or proactively engaging. While in the illusions of democracy, it creates this privilege where you don't even think about politics until election year. And then you vote due to the hype that's happening that one year. And then you don't really participate again until 4 or so years later. Right. And so, but but in that, everything is still running technically, right, without you participating. And so then a lot of your complaints, then what are they based off of if you weren't participating in the first place? So I think it's, in theory, as always, in theory, you would think that, if everybody was making the decision, obviously it would be more fair and we wouldn't have any problems. And I'm like, but are you in everybody's head though? Do you know what everybody wants though? Not sure. So I think it still would be the same analogy of there's way too many people in the kitchen, unfortunately. And
always too many people in the kitchen.
Always too many people in the kitchen. And just as normal human behavior, some people want to be more relevant than others. So in participatory, it only works in a population who truly believes that everybody is equal among them, who doesn't need to be perceived as higher up from somebody else or lower than somebody else. Once you're in a population that has some sort of caste system or has some sort of like hierarchy based on whatever toenails they have or whatever we want to base it off of, right?
Not toenails.
I mean, that is the level, that's the standard that we have come as a race of humans. I think that the participatory part, unfortunately, will never work, because then people will be bribing other people to sway them in different ways. And then you're just right back into the illusions of democracy, claiming everyone was participating when they really weren't, in a way that they would have authentically. So again, it's like, it sounds lovely on paper if like humans were not involved, which doesn't make sense because the whole point of creating it was apparently for humans. So yeah. So
wow.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah, we can talk forever about it. It's like, let's move on to the next one. Yes. I love how all of these remind me of I don't know what I feel like. I don't know if I read Animal Farm in school. I feel like that's one of those books you read in school. I don't know if I did or not, but for some reason I as an adult Damali, well, a child Damali, has been reading more of like the classics and stuff. So I went back to, and all of this reminds me of Animal Farm by George Orwell, right? Which, by the way, I don't even know if he would agree with stuff now, because like he literally died, I think 5 years after he wrote it. So like it probably, but there's a part in Animal Farm where it's like, in the beginning, all the animals are supposed to be equal and we're not above anyone and everyone does the same stuff. And then it ends up not working, right? And then all of a sudden animals are equal. All of a sudden we're bringing in things we weren't supposed to be bringing in, stuff like that. So yeah, all of these remind me of that. But yes, okay, yes. So that's with participatory. Right. The next one was unless was that it, or did you want to add anything else?
No, I think that's it. But I think, remember, participatory and then progressive utilization, they are similar to each other, no?
Yes. Yeah, it sounds like, because okay, so we have the next one is it's called Prout, Progressive Utilization Theory. And it's another interesting model. It was created by an Indian philosopher. Apparently, it is the cornerstones of the system are a vibrant ecosystem with collective rights for all resources, the unification of human society, bringing people together around universal values, and a decentralized cooperative economy designed for the welfare of all. So that definitely gives me some vibes of like degrowth, right? Because of the unification of human society. The decentralized cooperative economy makes me think of participatory as well, because everyone's cooperating. And then it seeks to balance individual and collective needs, focusing on self-reliant, sustainable local economies, while also focusing on global inequality. It also advocates for, again, decentralization, that word, decentralization of power, and promotes a more holistic approach to human well-being. And this integrates material and spiritual values. So again, sounds amazing, sounds great. Now we'll look into the cons. Similar to participatory economics, this progressive utilization theory can face challenges in terms of coordination, resource allocation, and also making sure there's fair representation. Many critics argue that it could be difficult to implement on a large scale and might lead to inefficiencies or difficulties in managing complex economic systems. Oh my goodness, so many SAT words. Managing complex economic systems. So this sounds like another one where we'd have to rip out the whole of capitalism, rip it out, throw it away, go into Prout, which would be difficult. And like the participatory, it's like, how do we even do that? Like, how do we just like complete? Because you'd have to, like, everyone have to change their mind, like the way that they think about stuff, their whole fundamental thinking about the world would have to kind of change as well, right? And we know how hard is it for you to change your mind on something? How long does it take for you to change your mind? And also and we can't do a thing where we just force people to do this. Like, we're gonna abuse people to make them, get unified and have their collective rights for all resources. Like, no, that doesn't. It's called progressive. Progressive is in the sentence, right? The title. And I like how it says it seeks to balance this. I'm like, okay, but what does balance mean? Is balance different for everyone? Does everyone have a different definition of it? And I think I'll go back to what you said, Dagny, about the Switzerland thing, where it's like, how is everyone thinking? Like, do we really know what everyone is thinking? Is everyone really agreeing? Is everyone really neutral? Or is that just what it's on the surface and you go deeper and not really, and like, oh, actually we're just forced to do this. I don't know, right? I don't live in Switzerland, so I don't want to speak too much on that. But yeah, and then this part too, it's like cooperative economy, humans cooperating, all of them together at the same time, cooperating in America. I mean, I don't want to be that person, but America's whole thing is like, do whatever the hell you want, right? I mean, not really, but no, like America is that thing, right? Where, you're free to do what you want to do, however you want to do it, but just don't break the rules. There are rules, but you can still do stuff. And then we want to cooperate. I mean, everyone together. I don't know. I don't know. And also, let me add one other part. To say, in terms of coordination, right? And then also, self-reliant and sustainable local economies. Okay, and then also we have the global part and then how are we addressing global inequality? How are we going to do that? What are we going to do? And we all know that inequality there's nuances to it in different countries compared to now, right? That's why there are so many conversations and conflicts about what is anti-Semitism, what is racism, what is inequality. There's no, like, everyone has a different definition, everyone has a different take on it, right? So what does that mean, right? So that's some things I would say about that. Dagny, would you like to add some things about progressive utilization theory?
Right.
Let's just say Prout.
Right. Well, again, I feel like Prout is very similar to participatory. So I would note the same thing of, again, too many people in the kitchen. And
always the kitchen.
It just wouldn't work in implementing it really at all. So the theme, as we now go into what would be next, or what has capitalism now become, the common theme among all of these that we just shared are that they all, in theory, on paper, sound nice, as in they are trying to provide what capitalism has not done. But none of them answer to the actual dynamics of economics, of how could it function sustainably for long periods of time without breaking down into chaos, or without providing loopholes for certain people to take advantage and turn it again into some sort of exploitative dynamic. So this is a quote that I like that we have here by a sociologist, Alan G. Johnson, that I just want to note of as we segue into speaking on what's next when it comes to, if capitalism continues, what is it morphing into? And I quote, "The most important thing to realize about industrial capitalism is that it is not organized to meet the needs of the people who participate in it. If capitalism does happen to meet the needs of people, that's fine, but that is not the point of the system. The point is to allow individuals to compete with one another in order to maximize personal wealth. This means that when a small portion of the population manages to take most of the wealth for themselves, the system is simply operating as it is designed to do. So, that end quote. And I end the quote.
The quote.
Yes. This brings us, we're almost full circle, right? Into what the issue is when it comes to capitalism. It is created for driving wealth. And you as the individual can do that. And while more and more individuals do that, the entire economy grows. The issue, though, is that those who created capitalism felt like we don't need to safeguard against people becoming monopolists and hoarding more of the wealth for themselves, like leveraging the system to just benefit certain people and turn around and insist, well, if you worked harder, you could be like me. When literally it was hijacked and had nothing to do with how hard technically you were working. Yes? So there's like a two-faced deal going on when it comes to what capitalism was created for and how it's been being utilized as a tool. One other note I also wanted to share was about this idea about what's next for capitalism and how these different systems we create, we didn't create them, okay? We researched them. These different ideologies and philosophies that we just listed for you, all of them answer the questions that other so-called like futurists in economics have been saying that capitalism needs to answer to or get out if it doesn't. The idea that everyone wants to be more localized, as in globalization, because of how it was completely disrupted in 2020, how people are not as, don't want to be so reliant on this product is coming from miles away from another continent, or this other, manufacturing part is coming way over there. And so if all of a sudden your borders are closed, there are no more cars to purchase. There's no more grain to purchase. If this country's at war with this one, boom, there's no more cereal. Like this kind of stuff is happening where these ripple effects occur that usually nobody notices because nobody ever bothered to ask, where do you normally get your butter? So now, everyone wanting to insist, well, we want to be more local. We should be doing it ourselves. All of us should be manufacturing our own thing, growing our own thing, making our own thing. So some futurists know that, well, if that's where the demand is leaning into, well, then all these other corporations will need to figure out a way of how do you support that? Do you need to recreate your supply chain? Do you need to put in more safeguards in place to guarantee that regardless of what's happening, regardless of what political things or natural disasters happen, you're still able to get what needs to get done, regardless of what part of the country it's from? So there's that.
Yes.
And there's also the need for the protections when it comes to the environment. That is a drum that's been beating for some decades now. But now that more and more that the results of it are things that we can no longer ignore, right? Because I remember back in the day.
You say Al Gore.
I know, right? We got to bring him up. Got to bring up his name because he tried. He tried. We're not going to claim we endorse him, but we are doing this on Al Gore's internet. So we gotta give him his credit. That when back in the day, people were saying, the ozone layer.
Remember that, guys?
Remember that? Some people, the ozone layer was in a chokehold of everybody wants to talk about. You guys, the ozone layer is disappearing. What are we doing? And most of the population was like, I can't even see it. I never saw it before. So I don't even know if I would miss it. And so nothing was done. Nothing was done to help the ozone layer. But now, when your hurricanes are worse than ever before,
California's trying to yeet itself off
America. What I'm saying? Now that your fires are worse than ever before, now that seasons are literally upside down, it's snowing when it never was supposed to. It's raining when it never was supposed to. So your crops are completely confused unless you are growing them in a nuclear plant. They're completely confused. Now that it's trickling to other people's normal situation of why was this animal born with two heads when it wasn't supposed to be? Now all of a sudden, more people are noting that, you know what, that climate change thing that y'all were talking about, I think it's real. It might be real. Yeah. Okay. So the idea that it's real, and to be honest, that same corporation, conglomerate, octopus that we've been talking about from the beginning of this episode is actually more responsible to this than any of us trying to not use plastic or use straws made out of trees or do, recycle everything as much as use that Ziploc bag as many times as you can. Doesn't make as much of a difference as these corporations pouring gallons of waste in places they're not supposed to. Right. So these sorts of things, futurists take note that these sorts of things cannot be ignored anymore because now they are causing issues for now people can see it. Back then, nobody could see the ozone layer. So they kind of were like, you know what? It probably won't happen during my lifetime. Now it's like, actually, it's all happening in your lifetime now, even though we still can't see it because maybe now it's disappeared completely. I don't know. So that's an issue. It's sad, though, that back then, just talking about the ozone layer and showing you the polar bears being too skinny, which was already telling you there's a problem. That wasn't enough. It was never enough for anybody to make anything. Now, even with the conspiracy theories of 2020 happened because, the icebergs were melting and some ancient something that was frozen got into the atmosphere. That was one of the conspiracies back at that time. Yes. I'm not saying if we did have a climate change, 2020 wouldn't happen, but I feel like they're connected. They are connected. So with that, one last point about what's next in capitalism. I liked the idea that another economist professor type thing, which is funny that all of these types of ideas can only happen in philosophy or academia instead of people who are actually making the decisions with these economies. I'm not sure where that disconnect is because is the professor dealing with the legislation? No, but it's fine.
Maybe that's why it doesn't happen.
Exactly, right?
Because you have all these philosophers talking, but the people that actually make it oh, we have all these problems happening. And then they're like, yeah, but we're not going to pass that law. Mm-hmm. But we need to, we're not. We have other things to.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
And then.
Exactly. Which I think.
The connections are not there.
Exactly. Which I think is why there's that gap with these systems that we just noted. Because they're all coming from philosophy, theoretically, hypothetically, fantastically. None of them have actually run a country before, as far as I could see, which is why there was always this gap of, but how does the economy work? Where would the money come from? How is the money moving?
Follow the money. It's always following the money.
All of it is in theory, it's written very nicely as a philosophy, but have any of you put it into place? Did you actually do the science project and I don't know, kidnap some people and get them to live through it for 20 years and see what happens? No. So unfortunately, while those who actually are running the country are we don't have time for that because our forest is on fire. So how are we going to,
the Amazon.
how are we going to deal with that? Because we're still trying to find ways to not pay taxes. So how are we going to think about this theoretical, hypothetical, et cetera, et cetera? But we digress. So this concept of neo-feudalism, I thought was fascinating as we segue into this next part of our conversation, where this is what some, thinking minds think capitalism has now morphed into, almost claiming that there is not an end of capitalism. It's just that it's now morphed into something else that we will continue with as a system. Now, apparently, neo-feudalism it's used to name the tendencies associated with extreme inequality, generalized precarity, monopoly power, and changes at the level of the state. A hyper-modern form of feudalism for today is the handful of tech companies becoming more rich and more extractive, turning their owners of these companies into billionaires on the basis of cheap labor of their workers, the free labor of their consumers and users, and the tax breaks bestowed on them by cities desperate to attract jobs, which literally connects to the AI example that we shared, as well as these other bigger corporations that we shared earlier in the conversation about this hijacking of capitalism. that the whole idea of not wanting a monopolist in charge of everything has basically happened again under the guise of development of technology, and we're moving into the future.
Mhm.
So, is there anything else you wanted to note about this transforming capitalism has become, or the end of capitalism, before we round up and possibly bring in a few global dysfunctional examples to Molly?
Global dysfunctional. Yeah, I guess all I could, I mean, it makes me think of Amazon. Like when you read that thing about neo-feudalism, I thought about Amazon. How didn't they go on strike? They're always going on strike, right? And then you have
always on
Jeff.
strike. Yep.
It's like, and this is like the line, right? There's like the people going on strike, and then you have Jeff Bezos and his like ship, right? Was it a ship or a boat or what was that?
Right. Spaceship.
Oh
no?
yeah. No, there was an issue with this boat, the big ship, and the thing with the bridge, removing the bridge for him, and then going to space, right? And then you have the people going on strike, and I'm just like, wait, what, right? And then of course I mean we don't talk too much, but then there's the insurance thing that happened, right? Everyone knows the insurance CEO that was killed. That obviously that happened under the capitalism system, and we're not going to go into insurance companies, but I'm sure everyone has a lot to think about.
That's
that
a whole
too,
other episode.
That's a whole other episode. Exploitation, another way.
Let us know if you want us to dive into that, because we're definitely open to it. Yes,
exactly. We want to do more research. Thanks a lot, Dagny.
Of course, why not?
For the history class again. It's all about economics, right? But when this end of capitalism, I don't know if that's the answer. Like, it seems to me the only thing that America can have is capitalism, because of the way it is, like the way it functions and it moves, that like how like it's a machine, like it's like a gigantic machine with like, how do you even get off this train? The train doesn't stop. Like, how do we, and then also if you rip it out, what are the levels of chaos that will ensue? Like, what kind of crazy like we're just going to be in like weird, like Twilight Zone, what's going on? And so I guess the only way to think about it is to adjust it in some way. Like, we could make adjustments to it and work with it and balance within the system and try to figure out a way to, because I feel like a lot of times, like when ideas start out, they're good. Like the idea behind, like if you read up what capitalism is and the good things about it, it sounds fine. Like, and it's like, oh, well, technically we are doing it. People can do what they want. Everyone comes to America to start another life, and like everyone's able to innovate, and people that we love what's that thing we have in America, the rags to riches and the pull from your bootstraps, right? And we love a good success story. Everyone's always talking about, I had nothing and now I have everything, and like I started out in a garage and now I am like going to space, like like we love those kind of stories of like, oh my God, they fought really hard. And even when we go into Marvel, like I'm too much of a Marvel anime, like I'm so into that stuff. I'm such a nerd. And if you talk about Marvel and why what Marvel characters like represent and what that's about, like we love that hero kind of story, right? And I think that all falls under that whole capitalism type thing, where anyone can be anyone in America, like, or that the thing about New York, like if you come to New York, you'll become blah, 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 and like we love that kind of vibe. So we like stories of that, right? But then of course there's the darker underbelly of it, and like like the main question: can we have an ideology, or can we have an economic system that doesn't sit on people's backs, or doesn't break people's backs? Like, is it possible to have a system where we have full equality, everyone is happy, everyone's money needs are dealt with, everyone's right are dealt? Because as we've seen from, well, I guess we might go into the global thing, but sometimes like I find that when everyone's basic needs are met, they're fine. Like if you just meet my basic needs and if I can eat and I have light and I can do my job and I can do everything I have, if you're doing shady stuff, okay. Like if you gotta do, you do what you gotta do. You know what I mean? Like if there's shady stuff to be done, okay, but just leave me alone. Like that's like, I feel like a lot of people feel that way. Like just let me do my job. Don't get in the way of my stuff. Because that's the main thing. If all of your needs are met, when people are full and healthy and eating and full, they're not going to be as triggered by what you're doing. right?
Mhm.
Especially in America, where like in other countries, you have everything is like everyone does one thing. Like it's a full, everything is connected. In America, it's like just because New York is doing something doesn't mean Florida has to do it. Or just because Texas, like we're all kind of divided anyway, so it's like, so the equality definition obviously would be different in America than other places because we're already kind of disconnected, right? And then I think for a long time people thought we were a melting pot, but are we? We don't know really. It's hard to, so it's just I think the main thing that there's so many different nuances to capitalism and human era and human behavior and AI and all of that stuff that you can't really like it's hard to pinpoint. It's too easy, but just get rid of it. And so all of these big, and they're always like so these sensational titles like the end of capitalism. Where is it next? If not capitalism, what? All this big stuff. And I'm like, is this a movie? Like, are we writing a documentary? Like, what is this? So that's what I would say. I don't know if that's an answer. I don't know. It's just a comment. I don't even know what was that. What was that I just said?
Just a comment. Just a comment. It's fine. It's totally fine. So yeah, as we're getting closer, it's okay. As we're getting closer to wrapping up, I just wanted to give a small note as well, because as we noted, we could do a part 2, part 3, or part 4 about this because there's so many other branches about this. So please let us know if you enjoyed this discussion and would like us to dig more into this, because having this kind of knowledge is important and it's cool.
Yes.
When you look on the global perspective, right? Because we're globally connected, right? And we do have frame of references from different places. So I was intrigued and interested to understand, how does this influence Africa, if at all? The way, if we're looking at capitalism in the US, anything that changes there is a ripple effect all over the world, regardless of any other country that's doing a different system. So what I noted about what I found when it comes to how economies in Africa are influenced by that, I liked how, not that I like how it works, but I liked how it is described as to why it's an issue and how interconnected it is to this hijacking of capitalism that we've been discussing in this episode. So just to give you some more food for thought. Okay. When it comes into the context of Africa, the continent of Africa inherited a disadvantageous colonial brand of capitalism when achieving independence, which is known as frontier capitalism. Now, frontier capitalism of the colonial order was dominated by Western extractive and accumulation interests, which means the economic system that was put into place was primarily built just to continue extracting and exploiting from the continent. This can get us into a whole other conversation about companies like Unilever, who basically try to do a deal of like, we're going to just continue colonialism, but do it under capitalism because now on paper, everybody is supposedly an independent country. That's a whole other story of how they still got a chokehold on that, because that's still today, not before, today. But that's another conversation. Anyways, what is also fascinating, but also unfortunate, is that frontier capitalism was created by foreigners to the continent. But once independence happened and now you have technically Africans in charge, what did they decide to do with this economic system? They decided to utilize gatekeeping in order to take advantage and control state power, continuing this extractive and coercive mechanisms to advance interests within colonial economies. So in essence, inheriting frontier capitalism basically morphed into accumulating self-interest, allowing extraction and exploitation to continue, while governing African elites in collaboration with their global colonial elites continue to maintain what this, I'm quoting now, okay? Continue to maintain an unproductive capitalism, which is basically the issue. So do you see how this hijacking octopus can just reach anywhere and everybody just lets it.
Continue to swim in any waters.
Yes.
Salt water or sugar water.
Oh. Which is sad. But then, like, because when you see things in which I just like, it's like we're not laughing at people's suffering. Like, that's not what we're doing, right?
Yeah,
but
let's
you
come
have
on,
to,
come on
you
now.
know, right? But you have to laugh because when you take things through the prism of economics,
laugh or you'll cry.
You know, you got to laugh or you will cry. And it's funny because I think also we have this thing about economics because of our dad, because he's always been drilling into us, follow the money.
Economics.
It's economics. You
it's
follow
all
the
about
economics.
Finances. The reasons are behind the finances.
Everything ain't got nothing to do with feelings. It's all about the money. What decision did they make? It was probably had to do with economics. So when you think about when you want to be debating on why is this country like this? Why are these opportunities like that? Do you understand what kind of economics dynamics are happening in the space? And to see how it just seems that of all the different systems we looked at, capitalism is the only one that has morphed its way, that does a lot of like this hijacking persona illusion tricks and making it so that you never really see what's going on behind the scenes, not knowing how much suffering and blood is going on in order to allow these conveniences to just be there at the stroke of a finger. You can have whatever you need at the stroke of another finger. Certain safeguards or security features are in place, but is the foundation of it, unfortunately, is no longer everybody's working hard and contributing to the economy. The foundation is hijacking, exploitation, extraction, and unproductivity in other parts of the world. And it's not enough to claim that, well, if you just remove capitalism, that will solve it. Now that we're now coming to the end of this beautiful discussion, we hope you now see that it's not enough, or that's not where your focus should be, claiming, oh, just remove capitalism and everything will be fine. If the future was not capitalism, then we'll be fine. All of us will be balanced and valued and aligned if capitalism wasn't there. That's actually not the answer to the results that we deserve at all. Instead, there's quite a change needed, again, in mindset, but in mindset that has authority, mindset that can actually make decisions, where development comes in, innovation comes in, legislation comes in. And now we're getting into our wrapping up part, right? We're going to bring it all in. And when we're connecting that to, okay, we've now been discussing mega macro levels. We bring it back globally and nationally. When you bring it back to, so as you as one person, what do you do with all of this? Now that you know all of this, now they have a better understanding that, well, economics is a bit more than just supply and demand. And there's a whole lot of shady stuff happening behind the scenes, all in the name of progress and productivity and wealth. What do you do with all of this? And how can you as an individual choose to be more informed when you're participating in it? All of us technically have to participate unless you want to run away somewhere under a rock and go off the grid. Most of us are not doing that. So if you're going to stay in this system, how can we as individuals be more responsible in how we participate, navigate it, and be able to make more informed decisions, regardless if we're in rooms that actually make this macro change, or you're in rooms that just maybe will just make a change for you and the people in your neighborhood. I feel like both of those sides of decision making are just as important. So just because the thing is so big doesn't mean that, well, because it's so big, we can just laugh because you don't want to cry and then just continue being a hamster on a wheel. I feel like if we are in this era where we have this much knowledge or awareness, I don't think that's the role we should be playing of, we'll just allow it to continue because that's how it's always been. And it's not like we can really do anything because who's going to take down these corporations? Again, is it really about taking down anything? Or should it be more about what can we cultivate to take its place? Because I feel like in all of these systems that we listed, if there was something that could appropriately and substantially take its place or morph it into something else, it would be an easy sell for people to subscribe to. Like, oh, there's this system that works and we all make more money. We're all more comfortable. All of our needs are met better than this other system. Okay, well then hurry up and like get me on board. Like sign me up. The fact that we don't have that yet. And so instead it's like we can see all these problems and still searching for, okay, well, where is it going to end? When is it going to stop? Other than voting somebody in or out, other than claiming you're not going to buy from one company or the other. It's got to be bigger than that. So for me, it does take a lot of thinking, but I do feel that our thinking capacity will be better served trying to figure out how do we collectively build the alternative that may not necessarily need us to create a huge hole first with chaos in order to scramble to find something else. This is why the system will continue as long as you don't give anybody a proper alternative. If the only alternative is chaos, that's not what we're going to do. So I'm looking forward to having that alternative idea really be practiced and implemented outside of academia, philosophy, theoretical, hypothetical discussions, which all sound nice to just talk about. But then you finish the discussion and just plug in right back into the matrix, plug in right back into the system that is not all of its parts are not working the way we deserve or the way it would be. It should be for now.
Yeah, and I also think that I heard this. I was on Quora because I was doing research on. Of course, I was doing research on .org, .edu, .net sites, but also looking on Reddit and Quora. And there was a message on Quora where someone was like, they really broke down how capitalism works and how the system is, and how like people that are like that say down with the capitalism don't really understand it. That's what they were saying. That like if you understand the economy and you want to be free, then that's how capitalism works. That because if they're saying if you give up capitalism, you're giving up freedom. That's kind of how they viewed that, right? And people sometimes don't understand that, so that's why it's easy for them to attack capitalism or things like that. This is what they said. And then there was a comment that was made to that Quarian that said that the only people that should be allowed to vote are the ones that understand economics, that understand capitalism. So if you don't get it, you don't fully understand it fully, you should not be allowed to vote. And that was kind of what they had said. And of course, I'm kind of like, okay, so first of all, inequality, kind of thing. Let's just bring that up. But it was interesting. That's an interesting thing to note, where it's like, is that what the issue is? Is that, if people knew more information? We don't know. I don't know. But I thought that was an interesting thing to bring up. And then I think when you brought up the thing about if you give someone a type of ideology or economic system that would work really well, then people would go for it. And it made me think of how it's like you find a need and you fill it. That's kind of how that works. So if you find a need, you fill the need, people tend to follow you, right? If it really if it makes their lives so much easier, and regardless of the cost of it, that's why, look at how many accidents we have in cars. Yet, do like when you hear about an accident, do you stop driving? Most people know, because it's like, well, I need to get to where I have to get to. But I'm like, but it's dangerous. You could die, but we still use it. Why? Because it fills a need, right? It fills a need with the convenience and things like that. And so I think, and also with phones, also any kind of thing they try to introduce with the Meta, I was going to say Siri, but if I say Siri, she's going to, okay, no. Okay, like, Meta, Alexa, any of those things, Google Play, all these things that Google didn't start out like this, and yet we're using it. Like, we used to go to the theater, but now we just stay on Netflix or streaming services. Why? Because we found a need that wasn't there before. Now no one goes to the theater, right? I mean, I still do once in a while. But yeah, so it's like but of course, changing a whole economic system, that's a whole big thing, right? So, or not changing, but maybe just like implementing a new things in it, like adding good things that can wash out some of the bad, right? Which, and again, capitalism itself, social, all those things are not bad in and of themselves, but it's the implementation of it, and like people. And so that would be the only way that would be adjusted. And then it makes me think, are people too smart, or do people have too many ideas? Because I wonder, like, I think about bugs. Let's talk about bugs, okay? Let's talk about animals. What kind of system do they have? I mean, obviously it's not economic in the sense of money, but there's some kind of trading going on with bugs and animals. I wonder if just to stay with me here, okay? Let me paint this picture, all right? So if we were to look into bugs and animals, what kind of system would they work in? What kind of system would they thrive in? Like with capital, like would they have their own type of system? And would they be able to like do things and work and cooperate? Because it seems to me bugs and animals seem to cooperate quite well with each other. Everybody kind of knows where they go and what their space is. And I mean, yes, death happens, obviously, but it's like there's systems in like the animal kingdom and bugs. And I wonder, like, if we thought more like that, or we had like jobs the way that they have jobs, would that work? I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's no way to think of it, but the thought just came to my mind, where it's like, what system do they use, and how come they're able to like cooperate with, like, especially with like bees and ants and stuff? Like, how do they know what their assignment is? Like, they do this, this is built, boom. And even when things are just like I think about spiders, why is that spiders chill out by themselves and they're fine, but ants are like, no, homeboy, I always have my family, I always have my gang, my peeps, And then for spiders, you mess up their spider web, oh well, and they just make it again, And like, how do they even decide that and all of that and stuff? So I wonder if we could, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but if we could take a lesson from bugs or animals, like how do they cooperate? What's a part of them that makes them, like, how could humans cooperate in a way where we create a system that, and then it makes me think of exploitation. Like, do animals exploit each other? Do bugs exploit each other? Just think, weird thoughts that, bob around in my head. But yeah, but to end, I would say, yeah, it's a need. I don't think it's destroy capitalism, like, I don't think that's how that works. I think that just means chaos and like, and also saying stuff like that, I think shows that you don't really understand the system, because it must, if it's still doing what it's supposed to do, then like, if it's still making money and that's the point of it, then what's the problem? That's what I feel like some people might think. But yeah, so I think it would be interesting. I don't know if we'll ever shift to something else, or things will change. Or like, I don't know. And then with the example of Africa and stuff, like, I know, like, that kind of shows that, like, we can't just like put America somewhere else. Like, you can't have the same economic system in any country, clearly, right? That's why other have their own systems, right? Like, it doesn't work, or we think about like, we didn't bring it up, like Sweden and like Finland and Norway and places like that, and Denmark, like, oh, they're the happiest place ever. It's the best place ever. And I've forgotten what economic system, I don't want to say, because I don't know as well about it, but their system's very different, but it works for them. And then think about the population, how many people and number of people and all that stuff. So yeah, it depends on the foundation of the place, how it was built. There's so many nuances that we probably have to do another episode, because there's so much interesting things to note. But I think the main thing is figure out, how do we adjust it? How can we add things, like, even if it's little things, to make things better? How do we figure out the exploitation situation and the greed and all of that? And like, how do we balance out? And how do we deal with our mental health in this, and realize there's more to it than just, the one thing that we're focusing on. So yeah, I find it, with all the research I did as we went more into the rabbit hole, I found it more and more just interesting. I was like, oh, so that's why. And then I kept on thinking about different things. Like, I had my first thoughts about stuff, and then as I researched stuff, I changed my mind. I changed it again. All these different things, which I think is important, right? To be able to have different ideas and things to think about. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, what would be the best system? What would be the best, and what's something we can do already to help it? Like, what little things can we do? Like, with all, climate change and the inequality and the economic issues, and yeah, I don't really. Obviously, we don't have all the answers, but it's definitely interesting to put a microscope on it and poke at it and see what it's about. And I think it's really interesting to learn all this stuff, because I'm like, oh, I didn't know all these things. This is interesting. Okay, good to know. Yeah, I think that's all I can.
Yes. So it's good. And that's, yeah. I know. And I like that, to that as we wrap up, because this is why we take the time to do what we do, because a lot of these types of information really should be taught in school. It shouldn't be that there's possibly a lot of adults who don't have this information, like they never knew. Not that they don't want to, but it just never came across their radar, and they've continued thinking about a certain thing in the same way. And so the fact that economics is something that you can't run away from, like it's basically all of our lives are kind of interwoven in it, right?
Yeah, enmeshed in it, yes.
Enmeshed in it, that it makes sense to, I think it's always a really beautiful and really good thing when you go through these types of exercises and it actually enhances your perspective even more, or even changes your mind on things. So now you're even more informed about, now when you look out and see how certain countries make decisions, or how different companies are making decisions, now you better understand of like, I see your bottom line. I see what you're doing there. Yes. So with you listening, we hope you enjoyed this episode and information. It was a lot. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot.
Definitely.
And we tried our best to hold you by the hand while you walked with us through it. So thank you so much. If you're still listening by this point, you're a real one. Thank you very much. So as always, let us know what stood out to you. Share with us, comment. Are these things you already knew? Do you know of have you already created the system that we should be subscribing to next? Let us know. And if you would like more conversations about this, because there's so many other branches that we can further go into, let us know. And you might find that on a proceeding next episode. So thank you again. We really appreciate you listening and sticking with us. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
All right. Thank you, guys. Stay blessed and stay open and stay researching. It's always good to find more information on things. Okay, I think that's all we have time for. So bye.
Bye. Take care.